What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. In this video, I want to talk to you about nuclear war survival and why I believe cities are actually going to be targeted in a nuclear exchange or nuclear war with Russia. So, if you've been following my channel for a while, you'll probably know that I've said for a long time that cities would likely not be targeted. And generally speaking, I think that's true, but there are certain situations where I think Russia would use nuclear weapons against our cities, especially our biggest cities. So, what situation or situations would Russia use nuclear weapons against our civilian populations? I can only think of two situations. The first situation is that we get into a nuclear exchange or nuclear war, could be a full scale nuclear war with Russia, and they think that they're going to lose the nuclear war, or we've done so much damage to their nuclear forces or so much damage to their country, and they feel like they have no other choice but to retaliate by attacking our civilian population to kind of get like a last laugh, so to speak. Because the truth is that in a nuclear war, the United States would win against Russia. And the reason why we would win is because our missiles are more accurate. We have more of them. We have modern warheads and delivery systems. We have stealth bombers. We have much more variety of delivery systems than Russia has. Russia is still using a lot of old Soviet era missiles. So we would probably win in a war with Russia, a nuclear war, okay? And Russia knows that. They know that they can't beat us in a nuclear war. So if they were to lose the nuclear war, they would basically do a final desperate act of retaliation against us and target all of our big cities to kind of, I guess, level out the playing field, so to speak. Okay. And this would all be done after Putin is in his bunker under Mount Yamantu or somewhere else, maybe in Siberia. So that would be one scenario. Okay. One scenario is that America defeats Russia in a nuclear war and Russia retaliates by attacking our cities as a final act of retaliation, very similar to a suicide bomber, basically. And another situation where Russia could attack our cities would be in a preemptive strike, meaning they would attack us first and they would launch a massive preemptive strike aimed at not only crippling our nuclear arsenal and our military, but also crippling our economy so we can't rebuild and attack them in the future. And basically, the goal would be to completely annihilate our country. And that's very possible. That was part of the USSR's nuclear doctrine. Their entire nuclear arsenal was built around a surprise nuclear strike on the United States, versus our nuclear arsenal is built more around a retaliatory strike. And that's why 2/3 of our nuclear arsenal is in our subs, because with subs, we can launch a very devastating retaliatory strike on anyone stupid enough to attack us. So those are the two situations where Russia could go after cities. Is if we beat them in the nuclear war, they could possibly try to take out our cities as a final act of desperation because they know that they've been destroyed, their military's been destroyed, their nuclear forces have been destroyed more than ours, much more than ours. So they would kind of want to level out the playing field somehow. And the way they would do that is to attack our cities, which would cripple us economically and create mass casualties. And the other situation would be in a massive preemptive strike aimed at completely destroying our country, decapitating our military. So, why do I think that this threat is credible? And why have I kind of changed my mind? Well, I still stand by my initial thoughts that Russia most likely is not going to target cities. But we've seen during the war in Ukraine how Vladimir Putin and a lot of his closest circle have no issues launching missiles at civilian targets in Ukraine. And in fact, they have been purposely targeting civilians in Ukraine to try to terrorize them to get them to quit fighting. So if they have no problem launching missiles at hospitals, schools, apartment buildings in Ukraine, you better believe they wouldn't have an issue ordering the nuclear strike on all the cities in the United States, especially because they hate us even more than Ukraine, much, much more. They see us as their biggest enemy. So that's one reason why I kind of changed my mind. Also, what's interesting is Russia has been developing a lot of road mobile ICBMs. And if you don't know what a road mobile ICBM is, it's basically a nuclear missile that is launched from a giant truck. Now, they have a lot of these road mobile ICBMs, and US intelligence believes that their entire purpose is to launch a retaliatory strike against US civilian populations. Okay. Now, before I get into more details, I want to just mention my website, www.NYPrepper.com. And when you get to my website, if you click on prepping references and articles, you're going to get a list of articles here that I've posted, and some of them are very useful, especially when it comes to nuclear war. I have nuclear war targets in Europe, I have nuclear war targets in Canada, and if you keep scrolling down, you'll see major nuclear war targets in America. Do you live near one? I highly recommend you guys go through this list. I have all of the primary and major nuclear war targets in every single state. And keep in mind, this is not a complete list. These are just the primary and major targets. I get a lot of emails and comments from people telling me that, oh, I forgot about some, Air National Guard base or something like that. Those are secondary and tertiary targets, not primary. Okay. Russia could possibly go after those secondary and tertiary targets, but they're going to primarily be focused on the targets listed here on my website, all of these bases here, okay, for a variety of different reasons. And for me to list all of the targets in the whole country would take forever. There's all kinds of secondary and tertiary targets, and it would just be a massive list. So I wanted to focus on the major and primary targets. So that's why you might not see certain bases here. Okay. Now, continuing on with the road mobile ICBMs, Russia has 180 road mobile ICBMs deployed. So here's an example of a road mobile ICBM. The three types of road mobile ICBMs that Russia has are the Topol-M, and the RS-24 Yars. Now, the Topol and Topol-M are the most concerning because they are designed to carry only one large warhead versus the RS-24 Yars is designed to carry several smaller warheads. So that's why US intelligence believes that these road mobile ICBMs were created for the sole purpose of striking American cities in a final desperate retaliatory attack after they've lost a nuclear war. Okay, so Russia currently has 9 Topol SS-25 Sickle road mobile ICBMs deployed. SS-25 Sickle is the NATO code name for the Topol, okay? And this is the Topol right here. This is what the Topol looks like. Each one of these Topol ICBMs can carry a 800 kiloton warhead. And again, there's 9 of these. Now, these are very old. They go back to the 80s, and Russia's in the process of replacing them with the Topol-M and the RS-24 Yars. Now, the Topol-M is basically just an upgraded version of the Topol, and the only difference is that it can actually carry a slightly larger warhead up to 1 megaton versus 800 kiloton, and it can also be equipped with multiple warheads, okay, or MIRVs, multiple independent reentry vehicles. It could also be put into silos. So the Topol and Topol-M together, usually they're deployed with one large warhead. So there's 9 Topols and 18 Topol-Ms. So that's 27 of these with one giant warhead on each of them. So that's 27 giant warheads, 800 kiloton to 1 megaton, okay? And then we have the RS-24 Yars. There's 153 of the RS-24 Yars. Now, the RS-24 Yars is supposed to replace both of the Topols and the Topol-M. Okay, so the RS-24 Yars is actually an upgraded version of the Topol-M. Okay, so if you think of the original Topol, then you have the Topol-M, which is known as the Sickle B or SS-27 Mod 1. Then you have the RS-24 Yars, which is known as the Topol-M Mod 2 or SS-27 Mod 2. Okay, so this is like a third generation Topol, the RS-24 Yars. This is the Topol-M right here. And then here's the RS-24 Yars. The RS-24 Yars is a little bit heavier than the Topol-M and the Topol. And the RS-24 Yars can carry 3 to 6 300 to 500 kiloton warheads. So more of a medium size warhead, but many of them, okay, they can carry 3 to 6 medium sized warheads versus the first 2 generations, Topol and Topol-M, can carry up to 1 megaton per missile, okay. They also have penetration aids as well, decoys to fool our missile defense system. The Topol-M also has penetration aids. The original Topol does not. And so altogether, there's 153 RS-24 Yars, 18 Topol-M, and 9 Topols. That's 180 of these road mobile ICBMs specifically designed to target our cities, okay? And why would they be designed to target our cities? Why not target our cities with silos or submarines? Well, there's a big reason for this. First of all, these road mobile ICBMs are very hard to detect. Once they disperse from their home bases, it would be almost impossible for the US to find where they are and destroy them because they're mobile. They can move around. They're not a fixed target. And Russia is huge. Okay, Russia is like 4 times the size of the United States, and most of Russia is unpopulated. There's nothing but taiga forest. So these road mobile ICBMs can disperse into the forest along specially created forest roads. They can park somewhere and hide under the taiga, and our satellites will not be able to figure out where they are. And then once they're given the orders, they can pull out into an opening and launch their missiles. So this would be used, like I said, as a final retaliatory strike against US cities. Okay, now don't panic, because although these are big warheads, they're still only 1 megaton and they would be air bursted. And because they're air bursted, the destruction would be more widespread, but it wouldn't be concentrated as much, okay, versus a ground burst. the overpressure is concentrated in a smaller area, so you would have complete annihilation of certain buildings close to the flashpoint. But if it's an airbursted warhead, you're going to have more moderate damage over a larger area. Okay, so I'm actually going to show you guys the damage radius in a second here from one of these missiles being detonated above New York City. Okay, so there's 180 of these road mobile ICBMs, and once they're dispersed, it would be very hard for our satellites to detect. Now, during deployment, these road mobile ICBMs, they don't just go alone. Okay, they're escorted by a number of vehicles. They have a support vehicle, they have a command and control vehicle, they have a radar vehicle that picks up signals from the Russian military command, and also a fuel tanker truck and other vehicles for security. So you're talking about a tail of at least 5 vehicles that are going to be traveling with one of these. So it is possible that our satellites could detect some of them, okay, because that's like a small convoy, and it would be very hard to hide a small convoy like that, even in a large area like Siberia. So it's really concerning, and you need to make sure you have a nuclear war survival plan. So this is exactly what one of these road mobile ICBMs would look like when they're ready to launch. They park in an open area. They have stabilizers, much like a crane. When you have those mobile cranes, they have those like jack stands that come down, hydraulic jack stands. Same thing with one of these. They have those stabilizers that come down and stabilize the vehicle during launch, and they just lift up the missile and launch it. Okay. And here's an example of a road mobile ICBM base. Now, these bases are well known by US intelligence, so these bases would be immediately targeted in the initial phase of a full scale nuclear war with Russia. So here we have some garages that hold these road mobile ICBMs. Here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 garages, and these garages have one truck inside of them. And these garages can actually open up their roof. And if, let's say, there's a surprise attack and they don't have time to disperse from their base, they can actually just launch right out of the garage. All they have to do is slide the roof open. But the good news is it doesn't take much to disable one of these road mobile ICBMs because they're just trucks. So they're not hardened targets like a silo. So all you would need is a small blast wave to tip over one of these trucks, as long as you can find out where one of these trucks are, a general location. You could do an airburst detonation that would cover, let's say, 50 square miles. And if you know that there's a road mobile ICBM in a 50 square mile area, you can just target that 50 square mile area with an airburst. And if the truck is there, the blast wave will turn it over and it'll become inoperable. So that's only good news. But I want to just show you guys what the blast radius would be if one of these road mobile ICBMs were to successfully launch their 800 kiloton or 1 megaton warhead and detonate over New York City. So here we have lower Manhattan, and this little circle right here is the fireball. Okay, this is how big the fireball would be. Inside of the fireball, everything is incinerated, but this is actually an airbursted warhead. Okay, so we can just ignore the fireball because the fireball is not going to actually touch the ground. It's going to be detonated about a kilometer or about half a mile above the ground. Okay, so the fireball is not going to come into contact with anything. So the only good news is that there won't be much fallout. There won't be any fallout actually, because the detonation is going to occur above the ground, and there's nothing that's going to get incinerated by that fireball. And so that's how fallout is created is when you have a nuclear explosion, it incinerates different objects like buildings and even the ground. But because it's detonated in the air, there's nothing to incinerate, so there wouldn't be any fallout. However, you would have a moderate blast wave that would propagate pretty far. And as you guys can see, we would have a light damage radius all the way out to JFK Airport if one of these warheads from a Topol, okay, they actually have Topol here on the nuke map, SS-25 sickle. You can select it, and it would go all the way out to JFK with a light blast damage radius of 1 psi. So that's kind of like nothing, really. 1 psi is just like windows breaking. That would be like a very strong wind gust. Okay, it wouldn't be enough to tip over cars or, you know, rubble buildings or anything like that. However, what's interesting here is the thermal radius. The third degree burn radius goes out quite far. You can see much of Brooklyn and Queens would be incinerated with third degree burns all the way up into Harlem and the southern Bronx area, okay, and also Jersey City here. You would have some really high temperatures, and it would cause things to catch on fire. You would have firestorms. All these buildings would catch on fire, and you would have third degree burns, even all the way down here into Brooklyn, okay? And then you would have a pretty big moderate damage radius of 5 psi. 5 psi is equivalent to about 163 mile per hour wind. Okay, so imagine 163 mile per hour wind coming through this whole area here, basically all of Manhattan. You have Williamsburg, Park Slope, Red Hook, Prospect Heights, um, Hell's Kitchen, Hoboken, Jersey City. Imagine 163 mile per hour wind going through this whole area, and 5 psi is enough to blow out eardrums, okay? So this is why I say you need to have a nuclear war survival plan. Even if you think you don't live near a nuclear war target, you just never know what the enemy is thinking and what they have planned. And if you want to learn more about nuclear war survival, check out my How to Survive Nuclear War series. I go into great detail about how to actually survive a nuclear war. And in addition to these road mobile ICBMs, it's also worth mentioning that Russia has some ultra heavy liquid fueled silo based ICBMs. They currently have 40 of the R-36 Voyevoda SS-18 Satan missiles. Okay, SS-18 Satan is the NATO code name. And this is an old missile going back to the Soviet era from the 80s. But this missile can carry 10 500 to 750 kiloton warheads, okay? 10 per missile, and they have 40 of them. So that's 400 half megaton to 3/4 megaton warheads, okay? That is massive. And these are liquid fueled. So the reason why I mention these particular missiles is because they're liquid fueled, they would most likely be used as an offensive weapon for preemptive strikes. Because with a liquid fueled missile, it can take 2 to 3 hours to fill up one of those missiles. So they would not be used in a retaliatory strike because we would know exactly where these missiles are held in, the silos. We know exactly where they are, we know where they're kept. And so they would have to launch these first because our retaliatory strike would destroy their silos before they have a chance to fuel up their missiles, okay? So these are primarily designed for offensive use, these liquid fueled ultra heavy R-36 ICBMs. These are the largest ICBMs ever created. Okay, the SS-18 Satan is the largest ICBM ever created, even bigger than our Peacekeeper missile. Okay, which was only deployed for a very short amount of time. And Russia is currently building the RS-28 Sarmat, which is supposed to replace the R-36. It's also an ultra-heavy ICBM. The NATO code name is the SS-18 Satan II. Okay, so it's basically just a upgraded, modernized version of the R-36. It's also going to be able to carry roughly the same payload as the original Satan, about 10 heavy warheads. And the RS-28 Sarmat is supposed to have penetration aids, okay, decoys like mylar balloons that can help the warheads evade or prevent getting destroyed by our interceptors. And we do have the ground-based mid-course defense, and these are missile interceptors that are designed to shoot out ICBMs, and the exact number of them is classified. There could be anywhere from 50 to 100 or even more, and they're located in Fort Greely, Alaska, and Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. There's also one planned for Fort Drum, New York. So those ground-based mid-course missile interceptors that we have are actually designed to protect our cities, okay? They're not designed so much to protect the military targets that Russia is going to be targeting. It's to protect our population centers. That's why we have about 100 of them, so we can at least intercept the warheads that are going after our cities, okay? So you need to have a nuclear war survival plan, okay? If you live in a big city like New York City or Los Angeles or Washington, D.C., any major city in the United States, you need to have a nuclear war survival plan. And remember, these are going to be air bursted warheads, not ground bursted. So there actually won't be as much rubble as people think. I've had people comment and say that, oh, there's no point in trying to survive because you'll just get crushed under rubble, even if you get underground. And that's not true. Unless they do a ground burst, then you might get crushed under rubble. But if they do an airburst, which is most likely what they would do if they want to destroy an entire city, they would airburst so that blast wave can propagate as far and damage a large area. If you get underground into a subway station or metro station, you'll survive. And you can actually stay underground until the radiation subsides. And again, there probably won't be much radiation if it's airbursted, okay? Almost zero. So in this situation, you're not going to need to worry about radiation. You're going to need to worry about blast and heat. And the only way to protect yourself from blast and heat is to get behind something solid. You want to put something solid and non-flammable between yourself and the flashpoint. Now, if the flashpoint is up in the sky, then you need some overhead protection as well, because the heat is not going to be coming from the horizon. It's going to be coming from up above. So that's why you need to get underground. So if you live in New York City, there's no excuse not to find a subway station nearby. There's subway stations all over New York City, and you can easily get to one within a matter of minutes from almost anywhere in New York City. You can run into that subway station, and that will save your life. You will survive, okay? So that's pretty much it. Wanted to just mention this to you. I do think cities are a target because of Russia's nuclear arsenal, the road mobile ICBMs with the massive singular warheads, and also the ultra heavy liquid fueled ICBMs, and just the leadership of Russia. You know, if they were to lose a nuclear war, they would want to retaliate somehow to get even with us, you know, level the playing field, so to speak. They don't want to just get destroyed and have their country destroyed, their military destroyed, and then we're sitting back and we're in a better position than they are. No, they're going to want to get even, okay, level the playing field. So they would go after our cities. So that's pretty much it for this one. Check out my nuclear war survival playlist, and also check out my How to Survive Nuclear War series. I'll leave links in the top right corner. Take care. God bless. And don't forget the 3 Ps: prepare, practice, and persevere.